If you'd like online business explained to you in a way that you can actually understand, go to latenightim.com/explain. It's completely free, and I made it just for you. Now, how about an episode?
Episode 106.
Late Night Internet Marketing.
This week on the Late Night Internet Marketing Podcast, we talk all about copyright. Now, I'm not a lawyer, but I'm going to tell you what I think you need to know, especially as an affiliate marketer, about copyright law. We also talk about some changes that are going on in SEO and how they might affect your website. All this and more on the Late Night Internet Marketing Podcast.
The Late Night Internet Marketing Podcast.
You've been working for somebody else, but you want a business to run yourself. You want to know how to start and where to begin. Can you get out your comfort zone, my friend? Yes, you can do it right when it's late at night. At the end of the day, your dreams burning inside. So keep it up and you will find that you're building your business one night at a time.
And now, broadcasting late at night from a little studio in the big state of Texas, your host, Mark Mason.
All right. The craziness continues at the little studio in Dallas, Texas. How's everybody doing? It is very, very early in the morning for this late night internet marketer on a Thursday. I hope you are doing absolutely fantastic and have gotten all kinds of work done on your internet business since we spoke last almost a week ago. Last week, we talked all about how to get back on track if you've gotten off track, and I hope that affected at least a couple of you and helped you get back on track, and that in the last week you've actually done something that maybe you haven't done in a while, which is work on your business. And if that's the case, I'd love to hear from you over at latenighinternetmarketing.com. But this week, we're going to talk all about a couple of things that are going on in the news with regard to Google, and we're also going to hit this idea of copyright because, as you know, several episodes ago, this topic came up when we were talking about the use of material from the American musical Hamilton, which is just a fantastic smash hit in New York. So we're going to talk about those couple of things this week, and I think they will be helpful to you in your business because, after all, this is the podcast that helps you build a successful internet business on the side. It's been a crazy week for me here in Dallas, Texas. You know, that's one of the crazy things about building an internet business on the side. A lot of times your real life gets in the way. And for me, this week, several nights this week, it's been something. And last night, it was a late meeting at work, plus soccer practice, plus a meeting at the school that one of the parents in my household had to attend. That would be either me or my wife, Paula. And juggling all that, plus getting dinner ready, plus homework, plus getting the kids to bed, plus a personal meeting that I needed to attend to last night pretty late. So, gosh, all those things added up together meant that this episode of the Late Night Internet Marketing Podcast is actually being recorded early in the morning because my podcasting time last night was taken up by a podcast interview for another show where someone wanted to talk to me. So the point here is, when you've got an internet business that you're working on the side, you got to be a little bit flexible and kind of fit in the stuff that you can fit in where you can fit it in. And one of the important ideas that we'll be talking about later in another episode is a key to that is knowing what to work on. What are the most important things? And for me, one of the very, very most important things for this internet business is releasing this podcast for you. Now, as far as the podcast is concerned, let's hear some listener feedback and see what people are saying about the podcast these days.
And now, it's time to hear what listeners just like you are thinking. Late night listener feedback.
Now, as you know, you can give a feedback about this podcast on iTunes, and those reviews on iTunes are incredibly helpful to me. And the reason is that that's one of the ways that iTunes decides which episodes to show people that are searching around in iTunes. It helps people discover the podcast. And so when someone leaves a review on iTunes, I'd like to thank them here. So I want to give a shout out to rlewis02 from the UK, who left a podcast review and said he just discovered the podcast and he thinks there's some great content. He listens on his way home from work and he's slowly making his way through the older content, but he'll eventually catch up. And he wanted to say thanks on iTunes and left a review, a 5-star review. Hey, rlewis02, I really appreciate that. If you would like to take a second to go to iTunes and leave a rating or review, I would really appreciate it. You can do that by going to latenightim.com/iTunes, and that will take you straight over to iTunes, where you can click the View in iTunes button on your PC or smartphone, and it will help you get a review done. If you're not an Apple iTunes person, that's cool too. Just whatever you can do to help us would be great, and I sure do appreciate it. You know, talking about stuff that gets in the way of your internet business, people have personal interests, and one of mine is baseball, as you guys know. The Rangers, the Texas Rangers baseball team, are about to win the American League West. Right now, as I record this episode, their magic number is 2. And what that means is they need a combination of 2 wins, or a win and a loss of the team that is following them, or 2 losses by the team that is following them, to lock up the American League West. That would guarantee them a place in the playoffs. And we're looking forward to that around here in Texas. But you have to be careful with those things, because that can suck away time from your internet business as well. But I sure love baseball. I think all work and no play, as the saying goes, certainly makes Johnny a dull boy. So you got to allow for some balance in that, but you've really got to be careful not to get sucked all the way over to the dark side when it comes to wasting time watching Major League Baseball.
This week, in the world of internet marketing news.
So in the news this week, and actually for the last couple of weeks, has been some activity in the search engine optimization side of internet marketing. And basically what I mean by that, and what people are seeing, is changes in the way Google is ranking websites. A lot of you are familiar with Penguin and Panda, and we've talked about those various types of algorithm updates on the show and what those are and what they mean. But this kind of idea of Google updating search engine rankings is an ongoing thing. It's happening every day. In fact, I once read an article where people who track these things have estimated that if you add them all up, the discrete changes that Google appears to be making, coupled with the statements they make out of Google headquarters, you can estimate that there are approximately 500 or so tweaks to the Google algorithm that are let loose into the wild that impact the search engine every year. That's almost a couple per day. So that is a lot of changes. This is one of the reasons why you'll hear me say, especially these days, that tweaking your content specifically for Google and writing for Google is really folly. There's some things that you should do to make it easy for Google to love you, but as far as trying to trick Google or write articles exactly for Google, that's craziness. And the reason is, whatever you do today is not going to work tomorrow, so it's a bad idea to base a business on that. Well, there are people that track this stuff. I mean, there's an entire industry of people that make their living helping websites rank better in the search engine, because that's an incredibly lucrative source of free traffic that you can get. And so people will pay money in order to have their websites rank higher. So that gives rise to this SEO industry. And people that watch this stuff have said that around Labor Day here in the United States, around the 1st of September, there have been some changes in what people refer to as the SEO weather. Over at Mozcast, Mozcast, they do what's called a weather report. And basically they report on the temperature of search engine rankings. Is it hot outside? And temperature, this idea of heat and temperature, has to do with, in science, with the speed at which molecules are moving around. Well, they've borrowed that idea over at Mozcast, and they report on the speed at which the internet is moving around, the turbulence in Google, over in Google, and they measure that and watch it change over time. And they reported a spike in the weather, a spike in the temperature. And I think the word they actually used over there for the weather forecast for September for the Google algorithm was stormy. And it looks like there were some updates that indicate some changes that may have to do with this thing called rank brain. And you'll hear more about this, and maybe we should have an entire episode to talk about rank brain. I don't think I've ever spoken about that for an entire episode. But basically, it's the part of the algorithm that uses artificial intelligence to predict what it is that you actually want or need based on what you type. So an example might be, let's say you type in how to cure foot pain. It might try to understand that by foot pain, you probably mean plantar fasciitis, for example. So rather than ranking on exactly what you type, which Google has done for a long time, that's why there's so much work on keyword optimization, Rank Brain might use its intelligence to understand that people who type a certain thing are actually looking for this sort of information. And it can learn, that's the brain part, over time based on things like bounce rate and the amount of time people spend on your site for certain keywords, that people who type a thing, they tend to stay on your site more than they do on your competitor's site. And so for that thing, even though maybe those exact keywords that the person, the searcher, typed don't actually appear on your page, they recognize the fact that people who land on your page, once they type that, really like it because they don't leave it and they stay there a long time and read your content. So it looks like the update that has come out in September may signal the increase of the importance of this algorithm called Rank Brain, which again tries to interpret what someone has typed in and interpret what content would be best for them, rather than literally making sure that the keywords that they typed in are in the article that gets pulled up. So that's really important because it goes to this idea of writing for readers, not for Google. It means that the content that you create needs to be the best content for people who are searching for your topic, because if it's not, Google is going to increasingly seek out the best content on the topic that you're writing on and make sure they show that instead of your page in cases where your page is not the best content. Really important. Content is still king in internet marketing, and so you really have got to up your game when it comes to creating content and publishing it on the internet.
It's time to get to work building your internet business. One night at a time.
One night at a time.
Okay, now so for the main segment today, what we wanted to talk about was copyright infringement. And what brought all this up was a discussion about fair use with regard to my commentary on Hamilton, an American Musical, where I took small snippets out of the musical and used them in the previous podcast episode. If you missed that episode, you can find that over at episode 104, the 10 Small Business Commandments. And so I thought it would be useful if we spent some time talking about copyright from the perspective of marketers, and particularly affiliate marketers, because we're always reviewing products and content and trying to make statements about things. And we wanted to understand this idea of copyright when we're publishing information on the web. Now, let me tell you right off the bat, I am not an attorney. What I am is a relatively intelligent guy. We're not sure relative to what. Okay, I'm not even making a claim that I'm super intelligent, but I am able to read complicated documents on the internet and try and explain them to you. So this information is for educational purposes, and the intent of it is to give you the kind of information that you might need to potentially make the right choice, but really have a discussion with your attorney. So again, I'm not an attorney. And if you need to make decisions about copyright, you need to make those in consultation with your own attorney. I hope that's clear. This essentially means that I'm not responsible for your actions. You are, which is a concept that we seem to be losing track of in the world today. That's a whole nother episode there. Anyway, be sure and talk to your attorney if you've got questions about copyright. So the first question is, well, what is copyright? And I guess this conversation is a conversation about copyright law in the United States, but this applies pretty broadly in terms of general principles. You'll, again, need to check your attorney for laws that are applicable in your particular area of the world. But here's the general idea of what it means to have your work protected by copyright. The essence of copyright is your right to control work that you create. It means that you can do whatever you want with the work that you create. And people, other non-you people that you don't give privileges to, cannot do stuff with your work. It gives you exclusive rights that you have exclusively, only you, to reproduce your work, to prepare derivatives from your work, things that, follow on directly from your work, to distribute copies of your work, which means kind of like publication and copies on the internet and so forth, to perform the work in the case of a musical work or play, or if it's a dramatic reading, you have the exclusive right to do that. You control that. And to display the work publicly, like to put the image out there in the world. Those are your rights, and they're exclusive to you and you alone unless you willingly give them up. That's what copyright is. And so you can see immediately that that's incredibly important in the internet when it comes to images and typed content and music as examples, and video would be a fourth category, because the people who create those works, they have the exclusive right to say how they're used. And I think what's interesting about it, and the first thing that you need to understand is there aren't, at this level, exceptions to that. You have the right. If you write a blog post, that blog post is yours to distribute, to display, to copy, to control. No one else's. And anyone who copies that without your permission is violating copyright law, at least in the United States. And I think, the next logical question from that is, well, how do I get this copyright? Because, to get a patent, I need to file a patent. And to get a trademark, I need to file for a trademark. Do I need to file for a copyright? And the answer is generally no. You don't need to file a copyright in order for something to be protected in the United States. It just needs to be fixed in tangible medium of expression. It means that you need to write it down, or you need to record it, or you need to carve it on a stone tablet, or put it out there, carve it into marble, fix it in a tangible medium where it can be perceived or reproduced or communicated. So that means that unrecorded speech and stuff like that, that's a gray area. We're not going to get into that here. Copyright gets very complicated really quickly. But if you're doing something that's fixed in a tangible medium, like a blog post or a photograph, or something on a hard drive somewhere, you get copyright by fixation. The moment you record it, it's protected in the United States. And that's true even if it's a temporary thing that you create that can be erased later, that the act of fixation actually gets you this protection. And again, what's protected is your right to reproduce it and derive work from it, to distribute it and to perform it and display it. Those are your rights as a copyright holder. That's how you get it. And there's nothing else you have to do. There's no need to file. or even place the copyright notice on a work. That's not required. I think attorneys would probably tell you that's a best practice. It also helps dissuade people from copying your stuff, but that's not a requirement of law. You get these protections of copyright without the formalities that used to be required to secure copyright protection. These things like copyright notices and filing for copyright were more important prior to the late 70s, but the copyright law was updated to protect everything as soon as it's fixed. And so now, while those things, as I mentioned, are best practices in some cases now, again, consult your attorney, anything that you create and fix is protected. What that means is that as a general rule, that you, as a person who's creating content who might violate someone's copyright, should assume that that work is protected. Whatever it is that you're considering copying, your ability to copy it means it's fixed somewhere. Your ability to copy that picture or to swipe some copy from a website somewhere, your ability to do that means it's fixed, and therefore, if you do that and publish it, you're in violation of copyright law. And the question is that always comes up is, will I get caught? Hey, I'm just a little website over here. Nobody's going to notice, right? I'm just using this one picture. Who in the world is going to notice if I use someone else's picture? Well, the truth of the matter is, the more important the internet gets, the more likely it is that you're going to get caught. In fact, with pictures particularly, the ability to search the internet for pictures is getting more and more sophisticated. And there are firms out there that's how they make their money. They go looking around. They're either hired by companies to look for copyright infringement, or they go and find egregious cases of copyright infringement, and they go and report those to companies that aren't even looking for it in hopes of getting a bounty. They'll go and say, hey, we're aware of some really important copyright violations that we found regarding your content. Pay us and we will tell you all about them. So people, not only are companies trying to enforce the copyright and protect their own stuff, there are companies that solely exist for the purpose of seeking you out and finding your violation. So in general, you just don't want to do that, because you don't want to come up against either a company where you violated their rights of copy, or one of these companies that does this kind of bounty hunting of copyright violations. So the first question that everyone asks is, what about fair use? I mean, I should be able to use these things because I've heard about this thing, fair use. And I think there's a couple of things to understand about fair use. And here's the most important one. Fair use is not part of copyright law in the sense that when you go read the copyright, it doesn't say, here are the rights of the copyright holder, except for the cases of fair use. What it says are, here are their rights. Here are your rights. And I mentioned these to you: the right to reproduce the work, the right to prepare derivatives, and so on. The right to distribute copies, the exclusive right. That's what the law says. The fair use doesn't play in to the rights that you're granted as a person who creates work. Fair use is a defense that people can use when they violate copyright. And the most common one you'll see is when someone is providing commentary on a work. You quote something that someone wrote in order to provide criticism. The other very, very common case is parody. And so what's happened is, over the years, the courts have said that it's okay, and in order to run society in a way that's reasonable, we have to allow for discussion of things that are copyrighted. And so in order to do that, we have this idea of fair use. Now, of course, these ideas of when you can use things, they're special ideas for education. But in our case, for affiliate marketing, when we talk about fair use, we're talking about swiping a little piece of review, or swiping a little piece of copy from a manufacturer's website, or swiping an image. And unfortunately, the only way you can really get an answer about whether or not your use is fair use is to have a judge tell you. And what does that mean? That means that you're in court. So again, I think to actually get an idea of whether or not you've got fair use, this is a fair use case, you can consult your attorney, but all this boils down to an idea of business risk. Now, when judging whether or not something is fair use, judges will use what's called the 4-factor test, and they look at the purpose and character that you're using. And really, one of the things that they look at there is whether or not you've added additional content or meaning or analysis to the work that you've borrowed. The second part of the test is the nature of the work that's copyrighted. And the reason they have this kind of distinction is because if you're quoting facts and getting those out into the world, generally the idea is to run society well, we need to disseminate information. And so we need to allow for quoting a study, for example, if you're reporting something that you heard in the news, like I reported earlier in this episode about things that have been observed in the SEO world. If I had quoted some facts from a report, that might very well fall under fair use. The other two parts of the 4-part test are the amount and sustainability of how much you took. Did you take the entire song or did you take a snippet? You got to be really careful about music, by the way, because if you take the heart of music, the essence of it, the hook, for example, a lot of precedent in the court will suggest that that's a lot more important than taking something that's not at the heart of a work. And then the fourth thing, which used to be in the old days really the only thing that mattered, no longer true, is whether or not your use will affect the potential market, or how does it affect the potential market. Will people now not buy a book because you've republished so much of it that they don't need to read it anymore? If you copy a book and distribute it in China, will that reduce the amount of sales that book publisher gets? Well, absolutely. Well, you've violated their copyright, and that's not fair use. If you take a book that someone has written and you record it in audio and sell that recording to Audible, will that decrease the amount of people that buy the book? Well, yes, obviously, absolutely. You're violating their copyright. That's not fair use. So this is this idea of fair use, but I think the most important thing that you need to understand about fair use is that only judges can decide this. And by the time you get sued or receive a demand letter from a lawyer to take down your content, now you're looking at legal fees and consulting with an attorney and all this other stuff that is just not a whole lot of fun to mess with. So now we understand what fair use is. We understand where copyright law comes from. We understand, some of the basic issues. So what does this mean for an affiliate marketer? It all sounds very scary and complicated. I've got this 4-part test. I never know what to do. And obviously, most of us cannot afford to contact a lawyer every time we write a blog post. Although, as I said before, I do recommend that if you have a question about copyright, you need to contact your lawyer, because I am not a lawyer. You get the sense that maybe I'm trying to disclaim liability there. That's what I'm doing. So here's some practical tips regarding copyright. One is, the very first thing is, don't steal images. That's probably the most easiest thing to get across and to make sure that you don't do. Get your images from a place where you can buy them, like iStock Photo, which is incredibly expensive. The place that I use is Deposit Photos, which is much cheaper. There's a free service out there called Death to the Stock Photo, where you can get images and so on. There's lots and lots of places on the internet. This is a thriving economy where you can go get images. In the case of affiliate marketing, if you're using Amazon as your affiliate marketplace, there are places inside of Amazon, in the Amazon affiliate area, where you can get images. Generally speaking, when I read the Amazon terms and conditions, You can't just steal images directly from the product listing. You need to get them out of their builder tool that they have. And I'll put a link in the show notes to that, to those terms and conditions that tell you where to find the Amazon builder tool. So you can't just willy-nilly steal things out of Amazon product listings. You also cannot directly copy significant portions of Amazon reviews. Because, I mean, if you think about it, one of the reasons people shop at Amazon is because of their reviews. If you steal Amazon's reviews and put them on your site, you're affecting the value of the reviews on their site. And so it goes to this kind of idea of fair use, that you are materially taking away from the value of something that someone has. Now, of course, if you're borrowing a little sentence or two from a review to give some commentary or analysis on that, that might be fair use. And so that's the kind of balance that you're trying to strike. So for affiliate marketers, I recommend, if you are dealing with Amazon, just follow their instructions and get pictures and images and stuff out of the builder. If you need particular images of a product, either take those images yourself with your cell phone camera. All of us have fantastic cameras that we can use to take super pictures that we can use for affiliate reviews and so forth, or contact the manufacturer directly, especially if it's a favorable review. They're often thrilled to give you product images, or they'll point you to a link on their website where product images exist that are designed specifically for your purpose. My recommendation on copyright is clear. Understand what it is. Hopefully I've helped you understand that today. Consult your attorney if you need advice regarding copyright. Don't steal people's stuff. Make sure you know where stuff is from and don't use it. Understand fair use, but make sure that you don't rely on it as permission. It is not permission. It is a defense against violating copyright law. And when you can, make sure that you have direct permission, licensed images, and so forth. You know, another place you can go, a lot of times you will see that images are available with a Creative Commons license, or content is available with a Creative Commons license. And I won't go into the details of that, except to say that if you have something where use is authorized and licensed, be sure and read the terms of that license and make sure that you're complying with them as best you can. If you have further questions about copyright law, I recommend that you do one of two things. One is leave a comment on the blog at latenightinternetmarketing.com/106. That'll get you to the show notes of this episode, and I'll do my best to research and answer your question, even though I'm not a lawyer and I don't even play one on TV. Or if you want more information about legal issues in general, go on over to my buddy Pat's podcast over at Smart Passive Income, episode 231. That's smartpassiveincome.com/session 231. And he's got a panel discussion with some attorneys over there, and they discuss copyright law for about 10 minutes that will also help you understand this complicated issue.
Now it's your turn. What action are you going to take to build your business?
One night at a time.
All right, so that is it for this week. I want you to take some action. Identify something that you've been meaning to do this week. This is what I want you to do for me. I want you to identify something you've been meaning to do, and by meaning to do, I really mean needing to do in your business, but you've been avoiding. Pick something important, something that really needs to get done that will move your business forward, and commit right now while you're driving in your car or mowing your yard or washing dishes or whatever you're doing. Commit to have that thing done by next week. It helps a lot if you write it down. I'll wait. Okay, hopefully you've written that down, and you'll have that done by next week, and I'm going to check in with you. If you want me to hold you accountable, email to me what you're going to have done. You don't have to be all that specific. I don't need to know your secrets, but tell me what you're going to do with your business. Email it to me at
support@latenighinternetmarketing.com.
and I'll help hold you accountable for a week and make sure that you're doing that. I'll follow up with you once or twice over the next week and make sure you get that done. Let me know what you're working on. I'd love to hear from you. I'll follow up with you and encourage you and say something nice. All right, fantastic. Until next week, let's go out and crush something.
You can do it right when it's late at night.
You've been listening to the Late Night Internet Marketing Podcast.
Be sure to visit latenightpodcast.com today to leave feedback for Mark. Download special bonus content, access the show notes, and more. See you there.
Until then, go and make some great progress on your internet business. One night at a time.
One night at a time.
Okay, I think it's scrambled eggs this morning. So it's almost time for me to cook breakfast for small people. So I've got to get off this mic and get out there and get some breakfast fixed. I hope you guys have a fantastic day. I'm going with scrambled eggs this morning and biscuits and maybe a little fruit. And I think that's enough. I try to make sure breakfast doesn't get too complicated because then, there's a lot to clean up. And I also try to stay off and not to do all carb breakfast, right? So not just all cereal or just cinnamon rolls or donuts or whatever. We do that sometimes, but I try not to do that. So we're try and cook an egg or fry up some bacon. Bacon is the best food on the planet, by the way. To try to get the kids something that's reasonably healthy and some protein that won't metabolize so fast so they won't get too hungry before lunch, because they've got to go a good 5 or 6 hours before they're released to eat later in the day. So I want to make sure that they have plenty of brain food. So I'm going to go off and do that right now. I hope you guys have an absolutely fantastic day. And I'm serious about what I said. If you are struggling trying to get something done, email it to me at support@latenightIM.com, and I will help try to hold you accountable for a week. Peace out.
Late night internet marketing.
Hey, it's Mark again. I wanted to tell you one more time about this absolutely free resource that I have for helping people who are trying to get the big picture for internet marketing, actually get started and understand what all their choices are. If that's not you, there's no more content. You can skip to the end. But if you're someone who came to this podcast because you're searching for how to get started online and you just can't cut through all the noise, I get it. That was me in 2007 when I was trying to get started. There were so many people throwing offers at me that I really couldn't even understand what all the different business models were. I couldn't understand how money moved around on the internet. And I couldn't really get a grip on what direction I wanted to go in so I could figure out how to move forward. I've created a free video resource for you just for that purpose at latenightIM.com/explain. In several short videos, I just explained to you what internet marketing is all about and what online business is all about and the different options that you have for starting an online business. There's nothing to buy there. You just sign up for access and you get the videos just like that. So if that's interesting to you, or if you know someone who's in a same situation, send them that link, latenightIM.com/explain. And let me know what you think. I'd love to hear what people are thinking that are in the exact same position that I was in more than a decade ago in 2007. In some ways, it seems like yesterday. And in some ways, it seems like an entire lifetime ago. Again, that's latenightIM.com/explain.
Late night internet marketing.